I'm going to quickly run through this README, which is an example of how to get a springboot application, which is built using Grails running as a FOLIO module. There's quite a lot of detail in the README, and that's to try and give people some context for what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. The nuts and bolts, though, we need a FOLIO folder. So in my dev environment, I'm going to make a FOLIO folder. And there it is, nice and clean. I'm going to need some FOLIO components, in particular the Okapi router. There are some commands here that just make it easy to set up my environment. So you'll see this clones a load of FOLIO modules that we might want to use. So I'll just grab that and paste it into my console. You can see it cloning Okapi. I'm cloning mod users as well, because that's something that almost everybody's going to need. And then I'm setting up a configuration file. You might have seen for mod users, for example, there's a way to pass in a Postgres configuration file, which is going to act globally for the FOLIO install. You'll see in the notes that doesn't marry particularly well with some of the idioms that Spring Boot uses, and so what I'm proposing is that, at least for our projects, we have a folio globals.yaml, which is where we're going to put the equivalent files, and we'll put some database configuration in there as well. We're going to need Grails, so this is going to be built using Grails 3.2.9, and I've suggested that we use SDKman as a way to control your Grails installation. So if I use SDK ls Grails here, SDKman will list all the current Grails I've got installed. The asterisk ones are ones I've got installed. The arrow is the one that's currently live. So you can see I'm currently using 3.2.9. If I do SDK install Grails 3.2.9, then it'll install it for me. I think GVM still works as a command. Yeah. So what we're going to do then is we're going to produce a zero functionality release first. So this is going to be a Spring Boot project that actually doesn't do anything, but that we can deploy in the FOLIO environment. Let's do what this command says. So obviously in my git clone commands, I commented out the git clone command that would clone this project, and we're going to build it instead. But you could just clone the repository if you didn't want to go through all the hassle. So I've created this. You'll see I've got a FOLIO demo module. And I'm using the REST API profile, which means this web application doesn't have any HTML type forms or layouts or GSPs. Templates. This is very focused on being an API component. I'm going to create my controller, so all I want to do is to be able to say hello world basically. So I'm going to use the Grails create controller method from inside the project root. Okay, so I get a message back saying it's created my controller and a test specification for it. What I'm suggesting is that we edit the controller now to just make it return a message that says hello world. So let's just edit that. So you can see this is the default controller that we've had created for us. This is the index method, so when I visit /hello, this is the controller action which will get executed by default. And all I want to do is to say, oh, I'm going to define a result which is a map, and that map's got one entry which is a message, and the message value is hello world. Excuse me. I'm not going to go into the subtleties of Groovy. You can see it's pretty expressive. You can do deeply nested maps and lists. And then I'm going to render that result object, that map, as JSON, which is what our API is going to return. Okapi modules can support a tenant API, which allows us to receive events that let us know that a module has been activated for a specific tenant. So we're going to do that as well. We're going to create a controller called Okapi, and here's that controller. And then what we want inside our Okapi module or controller is an action which is for tenants. So I'm just going to cut and paste that. So whenever our Okapi controller gets called with the tenant path, this method will be invoked. And all we're doing is doing a println here that says we've received this request, and then we'll grab the Okapi tenant header. By default, this controller will be available at /okapi, but the Okapi core module, if you like, looks for underscore, so we have to adjust the path that this controller binds to. Sorry. So in our controllers folder, we have URL mappings, and then all we're going to do is to add a special mapping down at the bottom there. Cut and paste again. So this is saying now, whenever you receive something on /_/tenant, then the controller you're going to use is Okapi and the action is tenant. We could actually make this a lot more general, so we could say _/ and then $action, and then we could just remove this action part here, which would allow us to use any action under that second slash. I don't know what services Okapi might expect modules to provide in the future, so I'm going to bind it to this very specific one for now, just to be on the safe side. I know a lot of the demo modules are transient. If you're creating apps for the library environment, the odds are you need to store your data. That's why people build web apps like this. So it seems a bit churlish to create a hello world thing that doesn't have some kind of storage in it. So we're going to pretend that we're building some kind of e-reserve system perhaps, and we're going to create a database table called resource. We're not going to get into the subtleties of Hibernate domain modeling, which is really powerful. I just want to prove to you that we can create tables in Postgres and have them auto-updated. So we're going to use Grail's create domain class here, and we're going to create a resource called FOLIO resource. Obviously a resource being a more abstract expression of perhaps a past exam paper or a CD, or some class notes. We've created our domain class here, and this is the empty domain class that Grails has generated for us. I've suggested here that we could create something that's got a tenant ID. That's going to be useful to us, and you'll see a little bit later in the document I talk about tenant mapping strategies and how one of the ways that I think we can express ourselves as members of the community rather than members of the core team is by making different assumptions, and we've made some different assumptions here about the best way to map multi-tenant systems and to do partitioning in multi-tenant systems. And in this case what we're doing is we're having a tenant discriminator in the field rather than using schema partitioning, which I'm not particularly comfortable with as an approach. But that's fine, because that's, as application developers, we can make those choices. So let's just grab these. My properties. A resource can have a title and a description, and obviously it's got a tenant ID that it belongs to. I've created some mappings. Again, I don't really want to get into the details of Hibernate mapping, but there's a danger of getting namespace classes if we're using the Postgres default schema. So this is a way that you can explicitly control the name of the table distinctly from the resource, and I've created some conventions around the column naming as well, to try and make it easier for people so they don't have to name aliases when they're writing large SQL or HQL statements. So this is going to create for us a domain class called FOLIO resource with 3 properties, as well as an ID, of course, mapped to a table name of FDM resource with these column names. Nothing particularly exciting there. Configuration is, we just need to come up with some conventions that make life really easy so that developers don't have to do special things for their apps to work. And I've suggested here that we use this YAML configuration mechanism. What I'm going to do is to prove that the configuration is working the way that I expect. I'm going to edit my configuration file. So Grails applications have a bootstrap class which is called application startup. And you can see here I've suggested that what we do is we output a message from the configuration file, and then we'll be able to use different configuration files that should change, sorry, I put that in the wrong place, that should change the message which gets returned, and then we can convince ourselves that the configuration is doing what we expect it to at the right times. So when the application starts up, it's going to throw out to standard output this message saying reporting config from folio globals.yaml, and then it's going to echo the value from test section.message. Relatively straightforward. And if I look in the parent directory, when I ran the script at the start, I created I didn't create. Sorry, that's a lie. I did. Folio globals.yaml. So let's have a quick look at that. So here's test section.message, which is the thing I'm referencing. I've also created what I'm going to use to configure my data source. So this could be considered the equivalent of the Postgres config.json file, which is used in mod users, for example. The reason that we've gone with folio globals rather than Postgres config.yaml is that it's inherent in Spring Boot apps that you don't tightly bind yourself to any particular database implementation, which is why we have driver class names and dialects here. So we could bind this to MySQL or Mongo or lots of different storage mechanisms underneath. And we can also have per environment configuration, so we could say this is a test environment, this is production. Because when we build this, we're going to use the Grails prod war, we're going to use production environment. It's commented out currently because I want to be able to run this without messing with the database. By default, the Grails applications use the H2 database engine, which is an in-memory standalone database engine. That's what we'll do when we run it the first time. There we go. So what we've said is in folio globals we want test global configuration worked, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the configuration file which gets packaged with the application, which is Grails app conf application.yaml, and at the top of the file I'm going to add the same configuration properties that I've overridden, but this time it's going to say test local configuration worked. So in the project wired configuration file, it's test global configuration worked, and in this one, it's test local configuration worked. That's it. So we've built an app that's got 2 controllers, a hello controller and an Okapi controller. We've got a domain class, which is a resource domain class, and we've added some bits of instrumentation to the bootstrap file so we can see what's starting. I'm going to use Grails prod-war. Grails 3 uses Gradle, and I could use Gradle assemble if I'd rather use Gradle directly. Old habits for me, I tend to use the Grails commands, but you can just use Gradle assemble. That's built my production war. It's built it in build, libraries, and then I've got 2 war files. I've got folio demo module 10.war and folio demo module 10.war.original. The .war file is a modern style executable WAR file or executable jar file, and it contains its own web server, its own container. It can be run standalone. You can actually cause a Unix style init script to be appended to the front of the WAR file, so you can use the WAR file basically as an init file and then link to it from your RC directories. We're not going to do that. We don't need to do that here, but it's useful to know. The .original is a very traditional WAR file that you could drop on Tomcat, but isn't runnable standalone. So what we want to do is we want to test our WAR file in our different environments. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test the WAR file when it's using my FOLIO globals file. Paste the command in there. So my dev environment's not entirely speedy. So the app started up, it's listening on 8080, and you can see reporting config from FOLIO globals, test local configuration worked. That isn't what I expected. So I've used the wrong path there. I should have used /folio globals. So let's just do that again. So that has run with the configuration that's embedded in the WAR file. This time I'm pointing it at our FOLIO globals file. Okay, and so now reporting config from FOLIO globals.yaml, test global configuration worked. So by getting the right path for Spring location, we're getting FOLIO globals used. So hopefully we've convinced ourselves that we can influence the configuration in a way that we can pass that parameter using FOLIO and Okapi's launch capabilities. FOLIO Okapi requires descriptors, and these descriptors tell our system how it's or where it can find particular paths and how to route requests. I've assembled two default descriptors. So these are in the README. What we'll have to do is just paste this. So this is our module descriptor. Oops. Okay, there's our module descriptor, and it describes our hello path and it describes our tenant path. And then we've got our deployment descriptor. So, oh, sorry, that's not well formatted. Let me just tidy this up so you can see what's going on. Okay, sorry about that. So, service ID and node ID are exactly what you'd expect them to be. They're like all the other FOLIO deployment descriptors. Inside the descriptor, we've got an exec command, and we've got java-jar, which is what you'd expect. We have the path to our module, which is also what you'd expect. Then we use --server.port, which is the springboot way of specifying a port. So that's different to -d http.port or server.port, -d server.port, if that's the way that you're used to specifying it. It's a slightly different way of doing it. And the --spring config location file, this takes a URI, which is interesting and possibly useful. And all we're doing now is we're saying this module should get its configuration from FOLIO globals.yaml. So the exec command is different to what you will have seen from most of the demo FOLIO modules. but that's okay. It's just different. It's not. Databases then. I'd like to be able to set up a database and show you this table being created dynamically. Because obviously I've not written any create table scripts here, and one of the great things about Spring Boot and Hibernate is it does a lot of that hard work and that heavy lifting for you. Mod users, the odds are when you specify your global configuration, you're going to want a username and password which is used for FOLIO. That seems to be the direction of travel with the Postgres config.json file. Mod users require some quite strong permissions. This app doesn't require quite strong permissions, but if you're going to develop a FOLIO module that uses other modules, that interacts with other modules, the odds are you're going to need your FOLIO database setting up a specific way, and so this is stronger than this particular demo needs, but it's what you probably need if you want to set up FOLIO locally, so that's why it's this strong. I've got here, I've got my Postgres account. I'm logged in as PostgreSQL, the DBA user, and I'll just paste these in one by one. Oh, if I do a du, you can see I've not got a FOLIO user currently, and if I do /l, you'll see I've got lots of databases, but I don't have a FOLIO database. I've got FOLIO Dev, FOLIO Live, and FOLIO Test, which is my other environment. But I'm just going to create a FOLIO database as per this. So there's our FOLIO database. We're going to create a user called FOLIO. And then we're going to say the FOLIO user can do whatever they like. Actually, I think this is redundant because of this super user flag, but if you were not granting super user and all these other things, create DB, slightly terrifying to me, but that's what it needs, then you would need to do this. So let's do it for completeness sake, and hopefully then we can now connect. Yeah, so I've now just logged on using my FOLIO user, and if I do a /dt, there are no tables currently. Obviously, what I need to do as well is I need to edit my configuration file. So FOLIO globals, I would like, when my module starts up by a CAPI, for this thing to connect to that Postgres user that I've just created. So DB create, this is Postgres auto data schema or database schema update tool, and I'm saying please do synchronize the database state with the domain model when the app starts up. So when this app starts, it'll use the data dictionary to compare the state of the database with the state of my app, and it'll do the necessary updates. Within the app, you can control that quite a lot using migrations. I'm not going to get into that here. So username, password, FOLIO, which is what you've just seen, and here's my connect string with my FOLIO database name. The other thing I need to do, if I want to use Postgres, I need to add a dependency on the jar. So let's edit build.gradle, and if we scroll down, we can see there's a runtime dependence on the H2 database there, which is the in-memory database we use by default. That's all sorted. So we add Postgres driver as well, and that'll work now. Bit of waffle about why we're doing what we're doing. Here you can see me uncommenting the environment section, which is what I've just done. Now, what I'm suggesting is that I run this app on the command line using the configuration file, which should cause the tables to be created. So, should we do that? Let's do that. Why not? And learning from last time, the FOLIO globals file I think is in the directory above. It's not 2 directories up yet. That's right. So this command should run our war, but now it's using our new configuration, and it should cause tables to be created in the FOLIO user. I changed the builds.gradle file, but then I didn't rebuild the app. So Gradle's prod war. So let's build a new war that does include the Postgres driver. And try that again. Okay, so our application has started up, but if we go to our Postgres thing, we can now see we've got a table called FDM resource. Let's just describe it. Yeah, and obviously it's going to have no data in it. Okay, so we've proved, well, we've proved that Spring Boot works as it should. That's not terribly exciting. So, Folio proper. Let's go to Okapi and do an MVM install. Just running the tests. Okay, so Okapi has built. Let's launch Okapi. Okay, we've got an Okapi. I'm going to do create a new tab here so that we can work. We can have Okapi there running. Let's just convince ourselves that there are no modules running and that there are no tenants installed. So first thing I'm going to do is to create a tenant. We need to be able to register this module and have it available. Oh, what have I done wrong? Ah, yes. Let me scroll back up. I didn't create my testlib tenant. Here it is. Okay, so that's my tenant descriptor. Let's try that again. Okay, so now we've got a tenant. Let's just make sure that works as we expect it to. Here's the curl command to list tenants. Okay, good. Now we need to install our module descriptor. So this is looking for a file called module descriptor. And module descriptor, yeah, that all looks okay. Okay, so let's do the tenant list modules, oh sorry, the Okapi list modules command now. Okay, and we've got our Grails hello world there. And now we need the deployment descriptor. So we've defined our module, let's define how to run it. And I'm just going to have a quick look at it to make sure. We're saying that the jar file can be found in up1 directory folio grails module demo. I've actually changed the name. So the path is a little bit different. Rubbish instructions. Let's get rid of that. Okay. That looks right to me. So I'm just going to switch to our Grails console because I've deployed the app. And what you've seen there, I lost it because it moved. we've got this line now in standard output, reporting config from folio globals.yaml, test global configuration worked. That's telling us that it's using the config file that we created in the parent directory and not the config file in the var itself, which is good because it means that we know that we're connecting to Postgres as well and we're using the Postgres configuration from that directory. We've got Folio running, and we got a message saying that the Grails application is running on 9131, which is the port number which Okapi passed in for our app to run on. So the last thing to do really is to say, well, can we call hello world, which is our Grails function, and obviously it doesn't do anything database centric, but it's proved the infrastructure. So here's the curl command, which is asking for am I telling the truth there? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I need to activate the module for the tenant, which is what this is doing. So this needs a script called okapi enable auth.json. So you can tell I've copied that file name and it's not named properly. We'll cross that bridge later on. Yeah, it's named more sensibly in here. So it should be named testlib mod activation, but I don't really care. Okay. So we've now activated our Hello World module for the testlib tenant. And the last thing to do is to actually try and call the script. So this is setup.share, which is all the commands I've just run in one script to make life a little bit easier. If I've got everything right, no guarantee I have, we should be able to call the Hello World function now. And what we've got back is a JSON document saying hello world, but obviously that's gone through the Okapi routing, so we're looking good there. You can see here inside the console there's the call. So looks like it's relatively straightforward to get Spring Boot apps running as Folio modules, and I think this is going to be quite good in terms of rapidly creating apps and using tools that are high productivity tools for developers. I think some of the tooling is a little bit high friction currently, and if we can get these tools working in Okapi, then I think it'll benefit the project quite a lot. Okay, thanks a lot.